Well, to say things are uncertain in the economy right now is kind of an understatement. And if you're like me, you're a little freaked out and concerned, especially, well, like I'm thinking about retirement. I'm not ready for retirement, but if you've been investing in the market or with cash or wherever you're putting your money right now to squirrel away for the future, you might be a little uncertain. And there's a lot of talk right now. If you look at the smart people, you look at the wealthy people, they're making investments in gold and silver. And there's still this mystery around gold and silver for a lot of us, including me. So I thought we'd shed some light on it. And we've got an expert with us. It's John Hamm. He's of the Texas Gold and Silver Network. And he joins us now. Mr. Hamm, thank you for having this conversation with us.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me.
And hopefully the way I introduced you, and by the way, I just want everybody to know, Mr. Hamm has been working in this field since the late 80s, right? 1987, you've been buying and selling gold and silver?
Yes, sir.
And well-credentialed. You've got a Bachelor of Science and an MBA with a heavy focus on economics. So first, I guess my first question is, what's the difference between what's known as money and fiat currency?
Well, that's a great question. And when I was 9 years old, my father, who was an economics professor, had his doctorate degree, taught me by showing me, he gave me a choice. He said, do you want 10 dimes? There were silver dimes made in 1964 or a dollar. And I told him, I said, well, Dad, a lot of times I'll have a hole in my pocket, so a dollar is less likely to fall out. So give me the dollar. And he said, no, son, you want these dimes. And he said, the reason is these dimes store value, because it doesn't matter if you make them into money or if you use them for electrification of appliances, which they're used for, or silver's used for cell phones, it's used for solar panels, it's used for battery operated cars to help make the batteries, it's used in weaponry. So it has value and it stores buying power over time. Currency actually is programmed to lose buying power over time. If you look at what the Federal Reserve's mandate is, it's to have inflation at 2% per year, which they haven't done a very good job the last few years. But 2% means you're losing 2% buying power a year if they do a good job.
So it's such an important distinction because, money and currency, as we've seen over the years, all the government has to do is start printing more of it. And immediately you see it devalues whatever you happen to have in your pocket or in your bank account. But if you actually own something tangible, that's a completely different animal. And so we saw a horrible thing happen at the beginning of this month in the stock market, where people say, $1,000 drop in the Dow for the first time in history. And immediately people saw this giant reduction in their savings if they've been invested in the market. So how did that affect what you do at the Gold and Silver Network? And what do you see? And was that a one-off, do you think? Or do you think that there's actually more dark days of August ahead of us?
It's a great question. What we're seeing is just the start of what's going to be an avalanche. Japan and China are the biggest buyers of U.S. debt. And Japan, especially right now, is struggling with the yen. It's losing its buying power. So they attempted to raise interest rates. That's what caused that big drop in the Nikkei. And then it caused a big drop in the Dow, because when they raised interest rates, they were expecting it to strengthen the yen, which it did. But what they weren't expecting is that it put so much pressure on other markets that were doing what they call a carry trade. They were buying the yen with virtually no interest and then investing it in, say, U.S. Treasuries, getting 5% or so. When they start raising the interest rate on the yen, it puts pressure and decreases the gains on the other investors. So what's really scary is how interconnected all of these economies are, and a change in somebody else's system can cause ours to bottom out. But as far as how does that affect my market, gold and silver are going to capitalize on this, because keep in mind, as currencies devalue, gold and silver are commodities. So the lower the value of the dollar, it costs more to buy these commodities. So they actually go up in value. They're a hedge against inflation. So they actually go up.
Well, listen, so you said you started buying and selling silver and gold in '87. So I think politically, that was definitely a different time in the world. And I came of age during the Reagan years. The last thing that my instinct is when we've got an economics problem is what can the government do to fix this? Because usually they're going to just mess it up.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are doing this, like, oh, well, we need the Fed to do this, or we need the government to do that. Is there any proactive measure that can be done right now by the government?
Well, I know what they're going to do. They're already telegraphing it. The Fed is going to decrease interest rates and they're going to have to print money. Larry, this is how bad the problem is. We're $35 trillion in debt. We have 160 trillion in unfunded liabilities like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, which our seniors depend on. We're going in debt $1 trillion every 90 days. To put that in perspective, it took 204 years for our country to go in debt $1 trillion. Now we're going in debt another trillion every 90 days. So, and you got the two biggest buyers of U.S. debt being Japan and China that are now dumping U.S. dollars. So we're going to have to print a lot more money and in order to keep from, not being defaulting on our debt. So it's going to cause products like what I have to go up substantially. And it's also going to cause groceries and other things to go up substantially as well.
So, there's just so much we individuals can do to influence our government. Sadly, we've learned that. But that doesn't mean we don't have choices. What should an individual to protect their financial future do, short term and long term? You heard me mention that it seems like smart money, wealthy people, central, they're all sort of moving to silver and gold right now as a hedge. Is it out of our league as individuals to be able to do the same?
No, in fact, you made a great point. Central banks are buying gold and silver at record paces right now. So are many countries. The East all the Eastern nations are buying gold and silver left and right. In fact, they're forming what they call the new BRICS currency. I think they've said they're going to call it the unit, and they're going to back it with commodities like gold. What can we do as individuals? We don't have to wait for the governments to do anything. I love the point you made earlier. I do not count on the government for anything. We can do that right now by taking some of our wealth. My recommendation, my dad used to tell me 5 to 10% in gold and silver in good times, but when things get bad, you need to have a minimum of 20% of your wealth in gold and silver. And depending on your risk aversity, like put more, because the other assets are really in danger at times like this. Very volatile. You mentioned it earlier, $1,000 drop in a 1,000-point drop in a day in the stock market. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So that's one thing people can do. And the other thing is we've already seen some intermittent blackouts. We've already seen at the beginning of COVID that we went into grocery stores and there were no food on the shelves. So keep a little bit of food and water at your house, keep some cash on hand, and then definitely everyone should own some gold and silver.
We are less than 3 months away from Election Day in November, or I guess it's election season these days. Early voting starts in less than a month in some states. I think we have a pretty good idea of what a Trump presidency would be in terms of economic vision and policies because we had a Trump presidency already. Kamala Harris is a unknown, right? A bit of a wild card. What are you expecting from a Kamala Harris presidency?
Oh, that's a scary question. I think we know what we would get. She was the border czar. She was assigned to protect our border, which is crucial with the country. And we've had an estimates between 10 and 20 million people come over illegally. 45% of those people immediately go on government assistance. So if she got in as president, it scares me to think what the numbers would be. But let's say,
are you, Mr. Harry, are you saying that she'll do for the economy what she did for our border security? Because that is a terrifying thought.
No, I think that's exactly what she would do. She would continue to let people pour over the border. I already named how bad we're in debt. If 45% of those people are going on government assistance, she's going to break the bank, and you know who's going to have to pay for it. It's going to be the taxpayers.
So that means printing more. It's basically Bidenomics on steroids. It's printing more and more and more money, which is how we got in this mess in the first place. It's a house of cards.
Well, if you look her father up, he's actually a Marxist economist. I mean, there's plenty of articles on him. So I think, yes, it's Bidenomics on steroids. It's a very scary proposition. I will say the silver lining there, and that's why I do what I do, because gold and silver, in the event that happened, would go absolutely ballistic upward. I mean, be scared. What is the saying? Be careful what you wish for, because $1,000 silver and $40,000 gold, you got a pretty scary environment that you're living in. But I think if somebody like that got into the presidency and did what I know they would do, we could see things like that.
Listen, we have a very smart audience, and they're smart because they're proactive about helping themselves, getting information, and educating themselves. That's why I'm happy to recommend the website, TexasGoldandSilverNetwork.com. You can see it right there on the banner, because I've checked out the website. I'm actually astounded by how many free resources you have there, educational materials, so that people can educate themselves on this. Is that the best way for people then to contact you too? Is that how you want them to reach out if they want to continue the conversation?
Sure, they can go to the website. There's a spot on there for them to send in questions with their email. They can also email me, john@texasgoldandsilvernetwork.com. And then my cell number is 318-464-8218. And I welcome calls. I started this business for it to be personal, because you don't just recommend certain purchases for everybody. I mean, it depends on how long they're going to want to be invested in the metal. It depends on what their goals are with the metal. So my aim is to be a valued partner with somebody and really figure out what they're trying to accomplish and make sure we get them into the right products.
You just gave your mobile number out to our audience. What are you thinking, Ham? This is you're not going to be able to sleep a wink at this point. Your phone's going to be ringing off the hook.
I love doing this. My dad taught me when I was a kid. And honestly, Larry, and I mean this sincerely, I really feel like 2019, God gave me a list of people to reach out to make sure they were protected. And they were people like my mother, my sister, my friends. And I'm very thankful now. 29 of those 30 have protected their wealth, and they've done extremely well over the last 4 years. But this is a passion. I don't mind. I do it all day long anyway.
Well, you're going to add some more people to that list, John, just based on this conversation. Thank you. Thanks for shedding some insights into this, even though it's not great news. But again, the good news is we still have some control over our own lives, our own futures, our own finances. It's now up to us to take control of it.